Did you know that up to 5 million of Americans are actually affected by hernias? But hernias is something that is poorly understood, especially by medical students. Today we're going to talk about 3 things that you should know about hernias. And we're going to break it down so that you could answer all the questions you need to know to become a real doctor and manage it effectively. So, wait till the end to actually understand everything on how to choose what to choose for the right patient. Let's get started. So, when talking about hernias, if you look at the dictionary, it basically says that it is a bulge or protrusion of an intra-abdominal organ through the abdominal wall. But for surgeons, what a hernia is, it's basically a defect through the fascial layer of the abdominal wall. But what is the fascia? If you think about it, it is a corset-like structure surrounding the musculature to keep everything tight within the abdominal cavity. When there is a defect, then things may protrude, and it's not necessarily that it has to be an organ. It could be just preperitoneal fat. And so understanding that concept gives us a better picture of what a hernia is, and so that we can actually focus on describing and planning how to fix it. So what are the things that you actually need to figure out a hernia when you see a patient? Number 1, let's focus on the hernia itself. The first thing that you need to know is it reducible or non-reducible, or what we call incarcerated? Difference being, self-explanatory, is one can be pushed back in and then the other one is stuck outside. Okay, then what about strangulated and incarcerated? Well, the difference with that one is one actually has concern for ischemia or other complications, and it could be bowel obstruction. And in that aspect, it makes a surgery more emergent because of the complications it poses. What are the other things that we need to know when describing a hernia? We need to know the size and location. The size, what we're measuring is the actual fascial defect, meaning edge to edge of the dimensions where the hernia protrudes. Sometimes it's very difficult to measure, and that's why I utilize imaging for something more complex to measure this defect. It only becomes an important aspect with regards to the contents when it is large enough that we have something what we call as loss of domain. If you have a small defect and most of your organs are on the outside, it would be very difficult to put them back in unless you created a space, which will then eventually make the hernia or separation of your fascial defect larger in order to get them in. The next one is location. In the abdominal wall, while using the European hernia classification, you could actually look at these guidelines to serve as a nomenclature in which hernia surgeons or other general surgeons can communicate properly, labeling hernias based on size and location, and that may help with preoperative planning. So now that we've described hernias, what are the things that we should focus on, and who should get a hernia repair? That's question number 2. So we've answered what is a hernia. The second one is who should get a hernia repair. So we have to differentiate between emergent and elective. Emergent are those people who come in with concerns of strangulation, or those with severe acute symptoms that they may need urgent surgery. Versus elective surgery, those are the people that basically can have their repair at a distant future. Well, for elective surgery, we want to make sure that the patient is pre-optimized. We control for several risk factors. Number 1 is diabetes. If we could actually keep the A1C under less than 7, and I understand some people work on higher, and these are things that you have to consider. The higher your blood sugar is, then the higher risk of surgical site infection. And that's a bad thing. When you're putting down a mesh and then it gets infected, you can get chronic mesh infection, which becomes a significant problem. Next risk factor is smoking. Well, smoking basically acts as a vasoconstrictor. When you're needing things to integrate to the mesh through wound healing, then you have a vasoconstrictor on top. That significantly impedes your repair and has a higher probability of having wound healing issues that can also cause surgical site infection and early recurrence. Other risk factors may include COPD. More importantly, once we've actually isolated the medical issues and optimized them, including their social issues, we have to pre-plan the surgery. And how are we going to fix it? Well, this is based on our description of the hernia and their post-surgical history. Their surgical history dictates whether this is an initial repair or a recurrence. If they've had previous hernia surgery, then that's a very important factor, and that leads to an increased risk of recurrence as well. That will also dictate if they had previous dissection in which plane, or if they have existing mesh. These are things to consider on planning your options for the repair, whether you're doing it MIS or you're doing it open. Other factors that you have to control for are surgical site infection and previous infections that need to be covered or eradicated. Let's say you had a patient with VRE or MRSA. So we want to make sure there is eradication of that infection prior to surgery, and you want to make sure that you also cover for specific antibiotics. Most antibiotics for clean cases would actually land us on a first-generation cephalosporin. However, if you have a specific wound infection that has been identified, you want to make sure that your antibiotics is tailored to cover this type of wound infection. Now that we've optimized the patient, we're now ready to consider surgery. Let's take a look at this diagram where you have the abdominal wall and different layers where you could put the mesh. You could do it as an onlay. You could put it as a bridge or an inlay, which most people actually don't prefer because it does not restore the continuity of the abdominal wall. Or you could do a retrorectus, a preperitoneal, or an intraperitoneal mesh. After choosing where to place the mesh, then we're going to have to talk about what mesh to use. Well, you could use multiple types. You start with, is it going to be permanent or absorbable? If it's absorbable, is it a bioabsorbable or is it a biologic? When talking about permanent mesh, there are multiple things that you have to consider as well. Based on their weight, are they going to be microporous or macroporous? What is the type of mesh that you're using? Are they going to be polypropylene? Are they going to be polyester or PTFE? And are they going to be coated or uncoated? Talking about coated and uncoated aside, we only use the coated version if we actually place it intra-abdominal. So if they're intraperitoneal, they could be coated. However, when you have a coating, it is harder to eradicate infection in these instances, and that's one thing to consider. The more inert one with less giant cell reactions is called polypropylene, and this is more commonly utilized. What are other things to consider? Well, we have the weight of the mesh and the porosity. And the general gist is the heavier the weight, the tighter the knit, and the less porous the mesh is. What is this good for? Well, it has a higher tensile strength, avoiding mesh fracture. So if you basically are doing a hernia repair on someone with a large ventral hernia and they're heavy set, then considering a heavyweight mesh may be better. However, what's the setback? If you get a mesh infection, you have a harder clearance of your infection on a tightly knit heavyweight mesh compared to a macroporous lighter weight mesh. And that's why choosing your mesh appropriately for the proper patient is something that you have to consider. And lastly, now that you know where to put the mesh, which mesh to choose, you're going to consider how to perform the procedure, and this may be done open, laparoscopic, or robotic. Most of this are going to be based on your surgeon preference or your technical skills. So there are 3 things that you have to consider after selecting the repair. One is going to be restoration of your abdominal wall so that you could have a tension-controlled repair. And this is going to be based on how large your defect and if a component separation is needed to allow mesh adequate overlap and decrease in tension so that when you close your hernia defect, it won't rip apart easily. What are the things that you have to consider for component separation? It could be either anterior component separation or posterior component separation. Both can be performed either laparoscopic, endoscopic, or open or robotic. Now that we've talked about that one, what's the last thing you have to know? Making sure you are aware of things that can go wrong. So what are the things that can go wrong? Well, there are several. One is going to be any injuries to your bowel that can change your clean case to a clean contaminated to a contaminated case. And that affects your risk for surgical site infection that may then complicate your whole situation. Other risk factors, again, is surgical site infection, even on a clean case. With larger dissection fields or multiple risk factors that you want to make sure you optimize, these are things that can pose as a threat. Because when you get a surgical site infection, you want to clear that infection by draining it and evacuating any pus that is formed and then placing the patient on appropriate antibiotics based on cultures and sensitivities. The third one is going to be seroma or hematoma formation, in which drains are placed to allow it to be evacuated. And lastly, there's always that risk of hernia recurrence, so patients are monitored. If you guys appreciated the video, please click the like and subscribe button. And if you guys have any comments or questions, please type them in the chat. And I'd be happy to see you guys on the next video to answer more questions and help you learn.